Hello, my friends. Trait Predictor version 13 is now on itch. As you can see, I released here on itch version 13, both the Linux and the Windows versions of Trait Predictor version 13. The price I settled at $25. I wanted to make it below 30 so that it's sort of affordable and not too expensive, but I also wanted to make it above 20 because every time somebody buys it on itch actually takes a little cut. It's a tax or something. They take a little bit of a cut for offering the platform, so I actually don't get the entirety of the money for the sale. So I wanted to make it a little bit above 20 for that reason. And also there was a lot of improvements, a lot of very significant changes, and I've been working uh, every day for hours every day. So I value my work, so I decided to make it a little bit above 20 for the price. So it is, I think $25 is a solid price for something like this, something that you can run literally an infinite number of times. I don't think it's too expensive. I think it's quite appropriate price for Trait Predictor. There are some alternative ways of running this application. I've got some comments on YouTube. Somebody told me that they cannot run my app on Windows. They got a Windows operating system and they cannot run my application. Well, most likely the reason you cannot run the application on Windows is because you have an overzealous, as I write here, you have an overzealous antivirus and it's preventing you from running the application. In which case, there is a fail safe. As you can see, I also attached a Linux version, a Linux build for the application, and you can actually just run it using WSL. You can run my application on Windows using a Windows subsystem for Linux. You can run the Linux build actually on Windows using WSL, and I write the steps for that here on my little power slides. So you can see the first step is you put the Linux build into D drive. So you download the Linux build of the application right here. You put it into your D drive. The second step you do is you open Ubuntu. Ubuntu, you should be able to just you should have it in your apps. It's usually installed already on your Windows system. So this is something that usually comes together with Windows systems. And then you enter in cd backslash mnt backslash d, all lowercase. And after you enter that in, you enter dot backslash, and then you enter the name of my application. And after that, you can use my application with Windows subsystem for Linux, and your resulting file, um, um, resulting file will be located in your D drive. So you can actually run my application on Windows using WSL as well, in case it doesn't work because of the antivirus preventing your. If the antivirus prevents you from running the Windows build, you can actually just run the Linux build as well. Now, let's move on to what you're actually getting with Trait Predictor. So, first of all, you're getting an executable. If you're buying the executable right here for $25, you are getting the executable, which means you are getting the application that allows you to create reports. If you have a raw DNA file, you can run a raw DNA file using the executable and generate reports for it. It has unlimited use, unlimited infinite runs, which means you can theoretically generate a million different reports for yourself. Obviously, it's very difficult to quantify how much that is worth. You can quantify the worth of a single report. A single report with my Trait Predictor is worth $4. You can purchase that using my. I have a Google Forms for purchasing reports, and that is worth $4. But purchasing the executable, the reports, it's kind of difficult to evaluate how much a report is worth with the executable because once again infinite use. But anyway, You are getting infinite amount of runs, infinite use for the executable. So that's obviously quite good. You are getting a prediction of phenotypical traits, eye color, hair color, and skin color. This is the best thing that my tool does, and it's very good at it. It is very, very good at imputation, the best at imputation of any other tool out there. The best at predicting eye color, hair color, and skin color. It has the best coverage of all the variations relevant to eye color out of any tool that exists. For hair color as well. For skin color, I'm not so sure, but there might be other tools that exist. For example, Snapshot. I think it's called. I think it's called Snapshot. Yes, it might be a contender for skin color, but for eye color and hair color, this is definitely the best tool in the world. So for the prediction of phenotypical traits, this is definitely the best in the business. For the prediction of phenotypical traits such as hair texture and nose shape, it's quite experimental. It's hasn't been thoroughly tested. I certainly I made it, and I have some doubts about whether it is very legitimate. But it is there. It is there as well. For the predicted phenotype, pictures, and oracle, it is also quite mediocre and experimental once again. Not too reliable. For the health panel, it is quite variable. Some data for some traits is very experimental and less reliable. For example, the data for bipolar and schizophrenia risk score is very experimental. A lot of these variations that are used for the polygenic risk scores have very high p-values and are not very reliable. But some of these other traits and polygenic risk scores are very, very reliable and solid. So for a health panel, it's definitely variable. And some traits are very reliable and solid. Some traits not so much. So for the health panel, it's variable. It depends trait by trait. But I can tell you about the schizophrenia and bipolar that is not very reliable. Not very accurate. For the ethnicity oracle, it is entirely experimental. This is probably the weakest part of my trait predictor. The ethnicity oracle, I have considered getting rid of it, but also getting rid of it would. Why should I get rid of it? It would improve the legitimacy of my reports quite a lot, but also um, why should I? Why should I decided to keep it. Um, why should I get rid of it? That's kind of the reason. But anyway, the ethnicity oracle, don't really take it too serious. It has been tested, and the testing shows that it is quite inaccurate most of the time. It is atypical for the ethnicity oracle to be correct. Actually, it is usually a little bit off. For the sample reports review, we're going to look in this video at a couple of sample reports with MyHeritage, AncestryDNA, and 23andMe. Because typically, we're going to look at some typical data files with MyHeritage, AncestryDNA, and 23andMe. We're going to look at what some of these reports look like. If you took an AncestryDNA, MyHeritage, or 23andMe, what your report might look like with my Trait Predictor. And we're going to see what the typical coverage looks like for these data files. So with MyHeritage, the typical report file is 168 kilobytes. For Ancestry file, a typical report file is 167 kilobytes. For 23andMe file, 160 kilobytes. For 23andMe, 163 kilobytes. And for comparison, for Cheddarman's result, which is right here, let's open that link. It is this result for Cheddarman. For Cheddarman's result, it is 173 kilobytes. So Cheddarman's result is actually a little bit higher quality than all of these reports, all of these sample reports that I generated with MyHeritage, AncestryDNA, and various versions of 23andMe. Nonetheless, they're quite similar to each other in quality. MyHeritage seems to be slightly higher quality than Ancestry, which seems to be slightly higher quality than the newest version of 23andMe, which seems to be slightly higher quality than the older version of 23andMe, but overall, they're all quite similar to each other. As you can see, Cheddarman is the highest quality of all of them, but that is because Cheddarman's file is combined KIT. Combined kit format means it combines the SNPs of Ancestry, MyHeritage, and 23andMe. So it has all the raw DNA SNPs of MyHeritage, Ancestry, and 23andMe. So it has all of these SNPs from all of these formats. So obviously it is a little bit higher quality in terms of the SNP count. This is what the result of Cheddarman looks like, but we're not going to look too much at the Cheddarman's results because it's not too interesting. It doesn't really interest us. It doesn't really interest us too much because we don't have combined kits, right? We have Ancestry, MyHeritage, and 23andMe kits, so we don't really care about that too much. Let's look at what 23andMe v5 looks like. So first, we're going to look at polygenic risk scores. What do we see here? Polygenic risk scores typically look like this. For some of these results, we're going to see no risk variants found in file. So what that means is there were no risk variants for these conditions that were found in the file, and it's very pretty. It says in green color, and it's quite easy to spot. For some conditions, you're going to see this SNP count, which shows you how many SNPs were used for this calculation. For some conditions, you're not going to see SNP count or risk alleles. And for these conditions that you don't see SNP count or risk alleles, what that really means is that for these conditions, most of the SNPs you're going to find in the report itself. So you can just look in the report right here, and you're going to find the relevant data for these conditions in the report itself. So for these conditions where you don't see the SNP count or the risk alleles, for these conditions, you can find the relevant data in the report. But for some conditions, for example, if we scroll down to bipolar disorder type 1 and schizophrenia, here we don't see the risk alleles, but we only see the SNP count. How come do we see such a high SNP count but no risk alleles? Well, the reason for that is because if we were to print the risk alleles for this condition, we would be printing a whole page of different risk alleles, and it would be impossible to read through that, and it would make no sense. It would be really difficult to research, and it would make absolutely no sense. So for these two conditions, I decided to go with the artistic the decision from an artistic point of view I made is to limit it to SNP count. Just display the SNP count. There's the same decision was made for type 1 and type 2 diabetes. Once again, there's too many SNPs to display the string of risk variants. For Alzheimer's, as you can see, it does not display the SNP count or the risk variants. That is because there is a whole panel for Alzheimer's in the results, and all the variations that contribute to the risk score for Alzheimer's are from this panel. So you can just look at the panel, and you can look at this panel, and you can sort of see what contributed to your result. So all of these polygenic risk scores pretty much are either on the panel or are on here. Then there are also some conditions here on the very bottom, such as Li-Fraumeni, myosclerosis, Hirschsprung, Fabry disease here on the very end. These conditions where it says no risk variants found in the file. These conditions that are very rare, and these conditions where it looks for rare variants, and it either says no risk variants found in the file, or it finds some variants and it prints them in a string right here. Risk variants found in, for example, it says fairly common. If the risk variant is common, it's going to say common. If it's not common, it's not going to say common. But typically, most likely, you're going to have something that says like this: fairly common or common. If you find in your report a risk variant that does not have common before it, that's actually a little bit concerning, and you should do some research into that. You should look it up, and you should definitely look it up in your file. You should look it up on Google, and you should do some research into this risk variant. But I actually did make a distinction between the common risk variants and the uncommon ones. So I labeled the common risk variants as fairly common or common, and the uncommon ones, the risk variants that are unusual or atypical, do not have any labeling. So if your risk variant does not have any labeling, then that's something you should do some research in. Or for example, here it says common, so that's not something that you should worry too much about. If it says common, that's not that much of a deal, not that big of a deal, right? So that's what a typical report looks like. Once again, we see the common risk variants here. There's also, I think, there is a allergies risk section. Wait, where is the allergies risk section? Let's look it up. Yes, so there is risk section for allergies. As you can see, all of these are really common risk variants. So that's kind of what a report looks like. And then you see biomarkers. This is what a report looks like for biomarkers. So there's a couple biomarkers that you're gonna get in your report as well. There's height, which is not actually not too precise. I don't like the height reports whatsoever. I don't think they're very accurate. There's expected telomere length, which I like, but I don't know how accurate they are. I can't really check. I don't know how to check that. There's expected level of iron in the blood, which is directly correlated to the score for hemochromatosis, it's kind of like a score for hemochromatosis if there was one. There is expected blood pressure, which is very interesting. There's hemoglobin, there is glucose, there's cholesterol, HDL and LDL, there's vitamin D. So there's all kinds of different biomarkers. There's ethnic calculator results. So all that you will see in your report. The ethnic calculator results is probably the least interesting portion of the result, but you can actually play around with it. There's source and there's target. You can actually just copy that and put it into Wahaduo. It works with Wahaduo. So if you really want to play around with it, and you can do this. Let me show you. Let's try to model this individual with Wahaduo. So this individual gets modeled as a mixture of 43% tall-lens warrior from Germany, 1/4 of Egyptian Ptolemaic mummy, then some Arab, some Ukrainian, and Kotas Neanderthal. Definitely very interesting model. Then there is also Nashakot calculator results, which is what this individual looks like. Phenotype. So it looks like this person has blue eye color. Blue eyes or blue eyes with an amber center ring. Definitely not brown eyes or darkest brown eyes. Looks like they have dark blonde hair, light hair color as well, and looks like they have palest skin tone. Looks like they have very pale skin. Looks like they have straight or wavy or curly hair, but most likely straight hair. And looks like they have intermediate nose shape between Greek and snub. Looks like they have BH2 and BH1. Yeah, and then there is snipper-free eye color classification. This is something you can actually just plug into snipper-free. This is for 7 markers. This is for 13 markers. This is for 23 markers. This is all for snipper-free eye color. There's markers for snipper-free hair color. This is markers for snipper-free skin color. You can just plug this in, and you can use snipper-free tools with these markers. So let me show you how that works. There you go. So snipper-free predicts this individual to have blue eyes. There you go. And here's the phenotype oracle. So you can look at the phenotype oracle for this individual, what this individual likely looks like. So the closest phenotypes for this person is this, followed by this, followed by this. And the closest phenotype mixtures are a mixture of 50% NAT plus 50% NAT, followed by 50% NAT plus 50% NAT, followed by 50% NAT plus 50%. Very interesting oracle for the phenotype. Okay, there is also the OCA2 and HERC2 eye color calculator results. So this takes into account only the OCA2 and HERC2 genotypes to calculate eye color. If you take only OCA2 and HERC2 genotypes to calculate eye color, this person also has blue eyes. The monogenic traits contain quite a lot of interesting stuff. There's you can scroll through this. I'm not gonna go through all of this right here. In the link, in the description of this video, there will be links to certain sample reports, and you can actually look through these sample reports yourself and look at what these sample reports look like. With MyHeritage file, if you have an I2A haplogroup, you are not going to get a report for that. It's not going to be in your report. Your report is just going to say I2, because MyHeritage does not look for any of the markers associated with I2A, which is really, really unfortunate. So you are not going to get I2A in your report, and that's really, really, really sad. Also, for MyHeritage and 23andMe v3, you are not going to get very detailed reports for all the rare conditions, such as like Lee-Fraumeni and Hirschsprung and myosclerosis and like, let me see, Pfeiffer, and like Treacher Collins type 2, Treacher Collins type 3, like in congenital insensitivity to pain, familiar hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, Waardenburg syndrome, Jacob Creutzfeldt, all these conditions, Peutz-Jeghers, basal cell carcinoma, all these conditions, Parkinson's. If you have a MyHeritage file, you're not going to get very good, very much SNPs for these conditions. But if you have an ancestry file, let's see, if you have an ancestry file, you're actually going to get really good coverage for these conditions. So let me show you. This is my friend's ancestry file. He has really good coverage for Lee Fraumanni, 32 total. Really good coverage for Fabry. He actually has really good coverage for all the rare conditions. 44 total for FTAAD. 6 total for Pfeiffer, but 16 total for Treacher Collins type 3. 4 total for Treacher Collins type 2. 26 total for Brugada, 10 total for IBS, 20 total for familiar hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, 14 total for Waardenburg syndrome, and 14 total for Jacob Creutzfeldt. So once again, and 50 total for Peutz-Jeghers, and how many for Parkinson's? 36 total for Parkinson's. So once again, if you have an ancestry file, you're going to get really, really good reports for all these rare conditions. So if you have an ancestry file, you're going to get maybe slightly less information. If we go back to the report here, slightly less information for all the monogenic conditions that we look for in this report, like right here, right? But you're actually going to get a lot higher quality report for all the polygenic risk score page information, especially for all the rare conditions at the very bottom of the polygenic risk score page. All of this stuff, you're going to get really, really high quality report for all of this stuff. So there's some trade-offs to ancestry files, but overall ancestry files are definitely really high quality for all the rare conditions that my Trait Predictor looks for. Definitely check out all of the sample reports that are going to be in the description of the video. In the description of the video, there will be links to sample reports with Trait Predictor. There will also be links to buying Trait Predictor on itch. And there will also be a link to buying a report for $4 with Trait Predictor, and a report for 2 people for $7 with Trait Predictor once again. Thanks for watching until the very end. Leave a like and subscribe. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.